Welcome, everybody. We've got an hour or so to hang out together, and every month we do a free Zoom Q&A for people to ask questions about values, anything they want, whether they've taken courses from us or not. Any questions that folks might have about values, we're happy to go there. We also tend to pick a topic to just have Kareen and I blather on about, and people can ask questions about that too. And today, the topic is around money and specifically investments, like values-based investment, strategizing, planning.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to spend some time going on about that.
And I know you picked this one, Allie, and I'm really curious to know what was behind picking this topic for you?
Yeah. It's definitely relevant for a couple of reasons. For folks who are listening, if you have questions and you want to throw them out, feel free to just raise your hand, raise your reaction hand, put in the chat, however you want to ask your questions. And otherwise we'll just go on and check with you as well sometimes to see. So a couple of reasons. One is I was chatting with a friend about investments, and he's a lot more knowledgeable than I am about investing. And I was telling him some of the things that I want to do, like some of my goals around investing. And he was like, oh, well, definitely, we could do that. That would be easy. I could help you with that. And here's all we'd have to do. And what you'd really want to learn about is XYZ. And almost immediately I was feeling overwhelmed. And I was also my reaction was I don't think that's actually what I do need. And I realized, and to no fault of his, right? Because for him, it was exactly what he would need.
Yes.
And I realized, and I said to him, I think I need to figure out what's important to me first about investing before I, to know that these goals I set are mine are actually what my goals are. Because there's something missing here. There's some sort of incongruence. I've said this is my goal, but now you're trying to help me action it and I have no interest. Right. So what's going on here? And I actually said to him, I was like, I think I need, maybe I should ask Kareen for some coaching on this. And then the second piece is I was listening to a podcast. I listened to this little money podcast where they give you 10 minutes on 10-minute tips on, money stuff. And there was some episode about how your feelings and your money are related. And it was going through these different steps to get to know how your feelings can inform what stage you're at around your money journey. And at one point they said, to get to the stage you want to be at, make sure you know what your values are. And then they're like, okay, now step 2 or step next. And I'm like, okay, I'm so glad they mentioned values.
Yeah.
And what we so often see is there isn't a lot of how do I, just figure out what your values are and somehow incorporate them. And it seems like there's a lot to that step. And so then I thought, Kareen, we could probably connect those dots.
Yeah.
And make it clear the ways that getting to know our values can be we can put the lens of investing on there and then get to know our values kind of all over again with that lens on.
Yeah. As we do with each of these different lenses in the world that we navigate through. Yeah. And it emerges or bubbles up new information that we needed to have each and every time.
Right.
For sure.
So is there anything anybody wants to share about did you see this topic name beforehand? And if so, was it interesting to you? And if so, why? Or if there's anything else valuesy that you want to hear about today? I just want to make sure there's room for that at the beginning so we can focus on what might be most relevant.
No, I'm quite curious where this goes.
Me
For
too.
me, when I saw money is what hooked me, ladies. Always looking at how to be financially secure, and beyond that even. I've been successful and then not successful and then successful and not successful. So I've just done a lot of readings around how money is energy, and how it's kind of tricky, because when you get into your unconscious feelings, like how do you release that stuff in order to be able to break down those beliefs, to be able to open up for that to come into your life. So when you said that you're going to be talking to it about values as well, it's like I'm still stuck with my values and I'm still not really sure, and I don't use them the way I should. And so anyway, it's just a combination of intending to get back to the values and looking for Corinne to actually maybe do some coaching with you too, which I didn't get set up over the fall. But yeah, it was just a dynamite combination for me this morning.
I love that. Yeah, it is such a rich conversation. We could probably do a series on this, to be honest. And it's such it's connected into some of our core values in such a big way. I'll just have a quick sort of, here's some of money is really important to me too. And I very much consciously aim my values through them to say, as a consultant, I value being paid. I value needing to be able to support myself and my family, and money is important to my safety and my security. And I anchor it in these top values. I've done I worked with an investing coach in the past who spent like one full session on values that was fantastic, but it was like, as Ali pointed out, like a top cut. It was like, what are your values? Anyway, let's move on. And I'm like, right? Like, oh, wait a minute. Let's spend another, 8 hours here. And they're like, anyway, let's move on. And what I found was that I could run through my top values, and each of those had some kind of money resonance. Even around fun ones like, fun and connection. I need to fund my fun and connection. My need around love, and I connect that to self-love. If I take care of my money and myself, then I am taking care of myself. It's a loving act to be taking care of the business, so that I could be calm and peaceful in my life. And then I realized there was like some really specific sticky values just around investing, like diligence and freedom and independence and education. And those pieces are like really profound for me. And it was important for me to pull all of those out and look at them as parts of it too. And I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, Ali, but looking at like, where do my decisions around money or investing support some of my values, and where does that same decision also frustrate some of my values? And getting that out into the open, into a conscious space where I can really dive into looking at those, was important, so that it's not an unconscious conflict that's happening inside my heart where I just feel unhappy or disconnected in some ways. So being able to use the know your values process of which are satisfied, and also that same decision, how is it frustrated, really helped me understand that space.
Yeah, there's so many directions that we could go with this, and it's so big. I kind of hope we do actually do some more conversations about the money bit. Yeah, I think it's, especially since values are so helpful when we're in transition, like when we're making a decision about something, or we're moving from something to something else. It's like often decisions like that really affect our finances, whether it's like I'm getting another job, or I'm moving to another place, or like I'm gonna get a new employee or something like that, it usually affects our money. And so those are the times to come back to our values. And by the way, like there's no expectation for us to be having our values constantly in our mind at every second. And if we don't, we're like failing at our values. There's no like expectation for that. And one way to like think about when is it a good time to come back and like remember and do another look or assessment is am I in a transition time right now? How big or how small? And that's a good time to take another look. So what I wanted to share today, actually what I wanted to share was like, what are all the steps from step 1 to step final about how to use your values to know everything I need to know about myself around investing. And so I mapped that out for myself, but it ended up being like 13 steps with like point A, B, C for each step.
Yeah.
And then I showed that to Cream and we're like, okay, great. This we're not going to get through in an hour. Great steps.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll use that somewhere else, but for the hour, are there pieces that we can pull out that are maybe what I ended up doing was picking a couple, 3 that were the most impactful for me when I'm going through to get to know myself around investing. What are the 3 that helped me the most? And these 13 steps were they ended up being like a mishmash of different steps that are used in the different courses. So a lot of it is like Know Your Values course. Some of it is the goal setting course. Some of it is the Values Reset, like Culture Jam course. Some of it is the Shadow one. So it's sort of like plucking from each of those to like tailor a process for this topic of investing. So I might just share those 3 and then actually it could be useful to hear from people what has worked for them around like mindset, skill set, process that we always come back to. We all have our own things that work around mindset, skill set, and process, regardless of whether we've done anything with values-based living. And it can be really helpful to do like a little share, cross learning share, if anybody has ideas. So anything, Corinne, you want to say before I dive into those? Okay. So of those 13 lovely steps, the 3 that stood out to me the most that actually tend to really help most everywhere for me. The first one is identifying what my feelings actually are around the issue. One thing that we focus on head, heart, hands at VBL. So what my thoughts are, what my feelings are, and what my actions are, because those are really helpful breadcrumbs to notice about ourselves, to find a pathway into the values themselves. Because this question of what are my values can feel a bit theoretical and nebulous, but what are my thoughts? What are my feelings? What are my actions are a lot more tangible. And for me, I get pretty stuck in my own thoughts and pro-con list myself to death. And so if I can start with my feelings around an issue, I find that to end up, it confuses me less and it goes into a more authentic sense of how I'm actually doing. So, for example, I was sort of writing out what's current state around my investing and how do I feel about that? So something that comes up for me around where I'm currently at around investing is guilt. I'll notice that I feel guilty especially when I'm observing what I think other people are doing. I have this idea that other people are more ahead of me or like know more than me about it. And I don't really know what to do about that. And then I set these intentions like, well, then I should educate myself and I should take these courses. I should take a course on investing. And then a year goes by and I'm like, oh, I didn't do that. And then I feel more guilty. I know what I need to do and I'm not doing it. And although guilt can be motivating, it's just not, it doesn't feel good. I feel like there are other feelings that are more motivating and more healthy in terms of driving my behavior anyway. And so, yeah, that piece around identifying and literally just letting myself write down or talk through all the different feelings that I feel, all the different emotions that I'm having about my current state around investing. And there's other steps too about like, you know, if I was where I wanted to be around investing, then how would I feel, right? But that's a different piece. The second one is, sorry if you can hear like thumping. I have people that live above me and they're in full form today. They must be doing like lawn work or something. So the second one is, once I've identified my feelings, then being able to identify my values underlying those feelings. And for me, because everybody's different, what tends to work for me, for good or bad, is I like to start with my frustrated values. Because if I'm identifying feelings that are uncomfortable, like guilt, it tends to be easier for me to identify my frustrated values that are underlying those feelings. So I'll say to myself, okay, so I'm feeling guilt about how much I know about investing. So what value is getting frustrated for me there? And then I'll say something like maybe competence. I'm not feeling very competent when it comes to, you know, the knowledge about investing. Or maybe I'm like overcomplicating it and I'm comparing myself to what other people are doing and assuming that because they're doing it, it should work for me. So there's something about simplicity that's being frustrated for me. And then listing all of the ones I can think of that are getting frustrated. The in brackets piece of this is also listing the things that are getting satisfied. For me, that turns into a bit of a step 2. So that's the second piece there, identifying the frustrated values that are underlying those feelings. And then I've sort of been touching on this as I've been going through, but for me, this tends to be a really important piece to realize and mark how many of my feelings relate to what other people are doing. And this is a bit of that values reset, that like understanding that I may have said this is important to me, but is it really just important to my mom? Is it really just important to society? And I've adopted that because it's easy. So really sitting with myself and seeing if I can suss out, am I guilty because my guilt is letting me know that I'm dropping the ball on something? Or am I guilty because am I borrowing that guilt? Am I guilty because someone else is telling me I should be? Maybe not with words, but with actions. Or like if my mom, this part isn't actually true for me, but if my mom is constantly telling me how guilty she feels because she's never doing enough around investing, it's possible that I could adopt that and be feeling her guilt and passing it off as my own. Even though if I took a conscious look and really mapped out, these are all the things I'm doing for investing. I'm actually doing a lot. And if I think of where I was 5 years ago to where I am now, I am like on track. Okay. So there's this story about I could always be doing more that I'm borrowing from my mom. And it's giving me a feeling of guilt that I don't need. It's not part of what's actually happening in my reality. So this number 3 is a bit of a rabbit hole, but I would say it's worthwhile to go down the rabbit hole and just see what's there and not necessarily have to resolve anything from it, but just sort of like we talk about letting ourselves delve into areas of us that we don't often go to, just like letting a little bit of that get like unsettled and get mixed around. And it can reveal new things or new ways or new ideas. So that's a little bit of the values reset course, but it's also a bit of the shadow course. Whenever we're talking about things that are unknown to us and then become known to us, we're often talking about shadow, things that have been revealed from our shadow. So those are the 3: identifying my feelings around an issue, identifying the frustrated values that are underlying those feelings, and then really getting to know how many of my feelings relate more to what other people are doing and my comparison to that than what I'm doing and how okay or not okay I am with what I'm doing. So those are 3 that just really seem to help me and ground me and give me a good sense of my own goals and my own what I actually want to get from my investing strategies. And then from there I can, like maybe adjust the goals for myself and pick things that are more in line with the values that I have identified through this process.
That sounds amazing. So like a great process to dive into, and I really enjoy how you're picking the things that you know work for you. And it's such a flexible model, and being able to follow the emotions and to do that self-inquiry is really like that self-coaching around your values. Can I ask you, what are your top values around investing?
Yeah, this is a cool thing too, actually, because the people on the line have taken enough of our stuff to know that we ask folks to identify their top values, period. We don't say like, identify your top values for work and for home, or for this part of your life or this part of your life. We just say top, period. But when I was doing this, I found that it was really helpful to say, not just what are my top values, but first, what are my top values around investing? And I named them very different things. And like Corinne was saying at the beginning, they are linked. My top values for life are linked to these top values for investing, but it was a really helpful process for me to just get specific and only think about investing to start. And so what I came up with, number 1, simplicity. And I defined each of these quickly. So simplicity for me is having a simple process for myself around investing that feels calm, not overwhelming. That's how I will know that simplicity is being satisfied. Number 2, fun. This process should be fun. Talking to other people about my progress, about investment ideas, about successes, and finding new ways to keep things interesting. Those are my guesses about what will help me satisfy my value of fun here with investing. Number 3, confidence. And all I said there is, I know that what I've chosen is best for me. You know that feeling or I get this feeling anyway, when I'm like, I've done all this investment planning, I've written it all down, 6 months go by, I've forgotten everything. I made the decisions, and then I forgot all the reasons why I made the decisions. And then somebody throws out this like idea or term, or like, oh, there's this new thing, or there's this thing that I can invest in. And I have this like uncertainty, lack of confidence, like, did I miss something? Or maybe I'm already investing in something like that and they're just calling it something else, or maybe I forgot, or like there's this funny like self-doubt thing that happens that again, I'm suspicious of. It's not necessarily based in reality. And so confidence ended up being number 3. top values around investing. Number 4, discernment. And what I said there is I know what else is out there, and I've consciously said no to those things, or not right now. Number 5, support. I have places to go to ask questions, places I trust. And I lean on other more experienced and knowledgeable and talented people, but I don't give my power over to them so that confidence and discernment, these other values, are jeopardized. So there's going to be a funny balance there with the confidence and discernment, and also allowing support to be satisfied too. Simplicity, fun, confidence, discernment, support. And just for interest's sake, my top values right now, I'll just say them briefly, are meaning, curiosity, competence, self-trust, peace, pleasure. Different than what I would have said they were last year or 6 months ago, but they're constantly evolving. And none of those words are the same, but again, they link in different interesting ways.
Absolutely. That's a fascinating process. I think I shared at the beginning what some of my values are, and I had a sort of similar process where I realized that I had some very different investing values, but looking at the same time, what are my top values and how are they similarly supporting an additional interesting process that I needed to do was looking at when I make decisions around investing, how am I accidentally frustrating some of those while satisfying others? That was like a important process. Like I've got a value, financial value around diligence. And I also have a top value around fun and connection. And those two can be in conflict with each other because diligence can accidentally end up being drudgery or rigor or boring or hard, not spontaneous, which is also one of my top values, like spontaneous fun. And so I really had to be like, okay, I am sacrificing my value around and to me, like the spontaneous and fun values look like not structure, not routine, not drudgery. So that's what those sort of look like. But here's this value around diligence that shows up, and I am consciously making this trade-off. And I will also identify that when I have more awareness around money, I can invest my money in fun, spontaneous things like going on trips or planning things that I didn't expect and just doing it sort of spur of the moment. And I can only do that because I have done the diligence of freeing up some income that isn't assigned anywhere. So I'm giving one value top billing for part of my attention, and it also has to be in this other space. And I talked about that earlier, but I think that's a really good concrete example for me that shows up a lot. And having that out in the open, everybody's invited to the table. All of my values are sitting around the table, and I'm talking to them saying, "You're taking a back seat today because diligence gets my like Monday to Friday time, but you get my weekend time. Diligence gets my Monday to Friday money, and what's left over, you get free time with spontaneous fun value." So everybody's happy and everybody's at least got some attention and not frustrated without noticing. And that's when we can end up with that internal conflict of trust me, I've got to that point where I'm like, I am deeply unsatisfied with something in my life right now. And realizing that I have overindulged in diligence or these like routine kind of values because I know it will get me a good outcome, but then I forgot to invite my fun, spontaneous values back to the table to be like, oh, buddy, you didn't have any fun this month or last month. Well, let's give you some, like, shower you with some attention. And not so much that it puts me in my diligence in conflict where now I'm like having to, I can hold some balance in those, but only because I have them out loud, only because I have them consciously sitting at the table. Can I do that?
Okay, what I love about what you're saying, Kareen, and I'd love to hear from people on the line actually to see how this is landing so far and if there are any questions that are coming out. But first, I just want to say, I'm noticing that what's so tricky about sharing the values-based stuff with people is if we were going to put out a values-based investing book, we wouldn't tell people, here's how you should do it. From Monday to Friday, you should prioritize your diligence value. And on Saturday, Sunday, you should prioritize your fun value. Like, that's often how resources will share. They'll say, I've figured it out. Here's how you should do it, because that's what works for them, or that's what works for a big population of people. But what's tricky is we're saying you have to write it. You have to write the investment manual, and we're going to give you the steps to write it yourself, which is so much harder to write your own like life manual, in this case, investment manual. And Kareen, you're describing a way that you wrote a chapter of your investment or of your life manual. And here's the chapter on diligence versus fun. And you've given your answer. And it's not even like, now that you've written it, you could publish it and suggest it to everybody else. It's almost like I've done so much work and it only applies to me. But the benefit of that is it's so relevant. We're doing the hard work, and it will be more suited to us than any other book that we could have found. And maybe if we picked a book and it had 15 chapters in it, one of the chapters would just suit us perfectly by chance. But the point is, if we rate it ourselves, it's going to suit us really, really well, this version of us. And we'll need to like upgrade the book and add new chapters and tweak as we get to know ourselves better. But I just want to name that difference. The values work is never going to let us know exactly what to do. It's just going to let us know how to figure out what to do, which is why hearing examples is so cool. So anything that anybody wants to throw in about either like thoughts on what we've been going on about so far, or if you want examples of like little chapters that you've written for yourself already, maybe about values-based investing for you. Gavin, I saw your hand.
I'm just fascinated by the conversation, because two books I bought but haven't yet read. The Ascent of Money. So this is a history, and it starts off by saying money is the store of value. So it's already talking like values are implicit in money, but it's part of like physiological. How do you get food and shelter and that? And when we're transitioning over into how do we live our best life, not just survive, it's a tricky, or conversations that we've just let good enough. Like I want food, whether it's bread or corn or apples or whatever it is, you have money for that and you transact. But when it gets into something else, you're talking about what is the value I create, so the money I have, and how do I invest that, because I want to support it with support people who have similar values. And you should invest in something so there's probably you would invest in something where there's mutually understandable or trustworthy values for you. So that's kind of quite interesting. And former Minister of Finance, Mark Carney, wrote a book called Values. So Minister of Finance and Chancellor of the Exchequer in Britain was talking about values. So I apparently have much to do because I have not read either one of those books yet, but I subscribe to Nissim Nicholas Taleb's idea of the library. It's more valuable to have books that you haven't read than the books that you have actually read. So you're kicking me off that these investments will actually come to something.
I like that. That makes me feel better about my book collection ever growing. The rate of growth is not equating to the rate of reading that I'm doing. So thanks for reassuring me, Gavin. Cool. Yeah, thanks for that. Any other
Okay.
comments, Nancy?
Yeah, certainly been listening avidly and taking notes, and then realizing that instead of listening to exactly what you guys are saying to like get the steps, I'm kind of making notes about what's going on for me. So then I'm like back and forth, and it's like, no, I'm missing it. But I think a couple pieces when you were talking, Allie, about, I guess it just made me realize that values are fluid. So instead of me having these top 3 values that I'm trying to fit every situation to and having trouble doing that, that I can assess a particular situation or item or person or whatever is happening for what my values are in that moment. And I don't know about in that moment, but what my values are with regards to that, whatever's happening. And so to me, it just makes it seem like it's a lot more open because I could have different values for different things. And for investment, of course, wealth and success are my top values. But like you were saying, Corinne, with having family and being able to do things for them and help them financially and do RESPs for grandkids and having fun and traveling and all of that comes down to money. And then it's like, okay, so what am I doing to meet that and how is it frustrated? But for me, I grew up with a shortage or not enough, a scarcity, and you have to work very, very hard for the little bit you do get. So it's trying to shift those beliefs that, there's billions, trillions of dollars in the world. And, and just shifting that is kind of some of my challenges. And when you were speaking, Corinne, it was kind of about, prioritizing your values. So, which kind of made me understand why during the week, I always say I have my professional hat and I've got my work self, and then I've got my personal self. And the twain shall never meet, which is not true. Sometimes it does, but there's a very bubbly, fun side of me that work doesn't see. And just in what I want to do on the weekends versus how I'm very structured during the weekdays. And that just helped me find a little bit of peace with that. Right?
Yeah, values-based living, the way we teach values is very different. In that piece that you highlighted, in all or almost all of the other research that I've done about people that teach values, it is find the top 3 and like buckle down on them and force everything into those 3. And there's always like, it has to be 3. And I am very much like, that is not accurate. There can be a top 3 that they fall into. But that's not the point of learning about values. Eventually you may find those, but that's not the endeavor. That's not the outcome that we're driving toward. It's self-understanding, self-knowledge is the endeavor. And you may end up understanding your top 3 at the end, maybe at the end of life even. But this is an ongoing relationship that you're building with yourself and using values as the conduit to create friendship with self, to create understanding, to create acceptance, to create a path into understanding the conscious things that you do and the unconscious things that you do. It's a very different process that we take. And this is one of those examples of that in action. It's just not the point. And there's something where you're talking about how do we navigate, how do we evolve these relationships with these values and letting it just be free. It's like less rules is always going to be my default in this, as long as there's process, as long as we have steps to take us into, but not hard, fast rules about the right answer or the wrong answer. So it is a bit of a different take that we're offering folks in VBL.
I wonder if you would agree. Oh, Nancy, yeah, please go ahead.
No, I made note of what I wanted to ask. You continue on, Allie. I'll drop that one in when you're done.
I was just going to say that I wonder if you think this is true, Kareen. We're saying that we're really going light on the rules, heavy on the process. And we're also saying you can mix up the process. You can change the process. And what comes to my mind is, okay, but how do I know if I'm doing it right? What if I'm warping the process in a way that it's no longer in line with the intention that I have here? And two things popped into my mind in terms of like guideposts. And I'd love to hear, Kareen, if you think they're true and if you think there are others. One is, am I learning more about myself? Am I continuing to learn more information about myself in the process that I am finding is working for me? And number two, am I being kind to myself while I'm doing it? So if I'm getting down this track and I'm thinking, I'm writing down all my thoughts, and then I'm starting to ascribe to them, and maybe they're not very nice, and I've gotten the conclusion at the end is, well, I guess I'm just, too much of a lazy person to be good at investing. Like if that's my conclusion, that's not kind. And so I need to go back and adjust my process. So those feel like important, like play around with your process and make it what works for you. But if I were going to create rules, those feel like they would be some of them. Kareen?
I think that is spot on. Like I said, the ultimate outcome is developing understanding and developing friendship with self, developing understanding of self and friendship with self. Exactly what you said, but I just say it in a different way. But that is exactly it. Be kind and learn. Are you learning more and are you being kind with yourself? Absolutely. Yeah, Gavin.
I think, Ali, you touched on a great guidepost, perhaps without even saying about it. When you talked about investing, you would know about what you didn't want to invest in, and you were comfortable with it. I think that's a really great guidepost as well, because values implies relative value. You only have so many minutes in a day. You only have so many dollars to spend or invest. So anything that you spend doing something, you're saying no to a whole host of other things. So are you comfortable with that? That's kind of the ultimate test of, have you satisfied your values? It doesn't mean that you don't value the things that you didn't do or you didn't spend your money on. It just means that you're understood that you have limited resources and you spent them where you chose to, and you're living with that.
Yeah, there's almost like this decision point, hey, that we get to when I've listed my satisfied and frustrated values, and then I look at them and I go, okay, they're not all getting satisfied, but am I okay with that right now? And maybe I am, or maybe I am so not. And then that's so really helpful information to say something needs to be adjusted here. Let's figure out what that is. I think that's so true, Gavin. We went down a bit of a different train, but Nancy, did you still have something you wanted to throw in?
Yeah, got a couple things. So for, what are the steps for writing our own story? And then my other note is, and while I actually do it, back to what you were saying, Allie, the best laid plans of mice and men and all mapped out. And then 6 months later, it's like, oh, shoot, that kind of fell off my desk there. I'm not sure where that went. And it's also, so before I let you answer that, I'm also just going to share that for investment of money for myself, in working the business and doing some career coaching and trying to figure out through values, what do I bring to the world? And if there was partway through the conversation that, and I don't remember which part, where it just kind of penny dropped. If I can figure out what I bring to the world, that will improve my finances, because then I know what I'm bringing, and then I know who I'm helping, and I know how I'm helping. And that just goes all back to all the marketing stuff that I was doing and could never really figure out. Some coaching is going to happen here, ladies, where you're going to help me figure out what I bring to the world. There you go. So, but for writing your own steps, thanks, Gavin. And some of those books look pretty thick. Yeah, so just for steps for stories as well.
Yeah, I wrote those pieces down. I just want to say that, like, if I clarify what I'm bringing to the world, that will help me in so many ways, including the finance piece. We've been talking a lot back and forth, Corinne, you and I, hey, about purpose and how values-based living is so related to purpose, and like trying to get good language for ourselves around what do we mean by that, and how, like, number one, does getting to know our values help us understand our purpose? We've gotten to the point where we realize, yeah, it definitely does. And how does it? And to be honest, that's where we began to realize that there's like depending on the language you use, you might call it spiritual component to values-based living, in terms of like, how am I connected to the rest of existence? And how am I contributing to that? Getting really clear and in relationship with our values, it feels like a natural sort of like byproduct. The more in tune I am with my values, the more I'm living I'm living based on those values. I'm basically living authentically, and I'm able to really with ease plug into the areas that are most suited for me, and I'm contributing to the world the way that best suits me, which is going to be the way that the world most needs naturally, right? And so, yeah, thanks for just naming that, Nancy, because it feels like, sort of like, I don't know if this is true, but it feels true right now. It feels like the inevitable final step of values-based living is like true clarity about how, about my purpose in the whole scheme of things here, and then knowing how to actually action that purpose.
Yeah, and even is that achievable? Because like another thing I wrote down this morning was that I'm always frustrated with myself in my life. And always is a very black and white term. And I'm very happy and I live my life. But there's this little burr in me that just keeps, with those little points that just kind of keep churning and churning and just make you uncomfortable. Princess and the Pea or something like that. Yeah, so it's just like, I just realized that I'm always like, there's this constant frustration with things in my life and around myself. And whether that comes down to figuring out what my purpose is, and if that's even possible. I've done readings where, this big fad of you have to find your passion and your purpose started back in the 50s and 60s, and just pick something, do it, and then make it your passion. So done all kinds of reading and stuff, but there's something within me that is never satisfied or has not been satisfied yet. So maybe going down this path might help with some of that too. So thank you so much this morning, ladies. I know we're not done. We have a few minutes left, but beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. I there's so much I want to comment on there, Nancy, and I'm glad that we're going to have an opportunity to talk after. Why don't I close with one question, because we have 5 minutes left, and honestly, I struggle with like wrapping things up and not carrying on forever. Can I ask, throw it out, can money buy happiness? Open the floor.
Yes, it can. Most definitely can.
Tell me more. How do you know
You
that
have to
with
be
such
happy within
certainty?
yourself. That's not something money can do for you.
Yeah.
You have to be happy within yourself. Once you have that, money brings you everything else. It brings you travel, it brings you adventures, it brings you experiences, it brings you sharing and connection.
You see how quickly you were able to just rattle off top values? Bang, 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 bang. No problem.
Did I just do something?
You did.
Can we replay, please?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll hold that for you.
Thank you.
Well done. Ali or Kevin?
I'll just throw in there a more tentative yes than what Nancy said, because money is a store of value. You can exchange it for lots of things of value. And if you know what your values are, you can satisfy your values, but it doesn't buy everything. So knowing what it can buy and making the most use of that, and knowing what it can't buy and making sure you get that through other ways. So, but it is a very big component or enabler of getting values satisfied.
Oh, what a juicy question, Kareen. That could be a starting point for a whole other conversation. I love it. Sometimes I'll often actually do this when I'm feeling disgruntled about money. I'll let myself imagine that I do have all the money that I need. You know, that classic, like, if I won the lottery, what would I do? And I really let myself imagine my response. And it's a fascinating, like, thought experiment, because usually I have some ideas about what I would do differently, but I often get clues about what else is going on, like what else, what other values I'm telling myself I don't have access to, but I actually do. I wonder if I could think of an example. Like, I'll quit my job. If I won the lottery, I'd quit my day job. And then I think, like, my most important values are around connection. And then I'm like actually thinking through, what am I going to do with my days? Everybody else is still working. Like, who am I going to hang out with? Like, how am I going to pay other people to not go to work and go on vacation with me? Everyone else's life is still the same. Like, what am I actually getting from the not working anymore? And it goes down this interesting track, like Nancy, you're talking about. There's adventure, there's like travel, there's all these things. And yes, totally, that is absolutely a possible thing. But usually I get to the end of this thought experiment and then I ask myself, are there things that I could do right now that I've listed all these things I want to do? Like, are there things that I could do that I'm just not prioritizing because I have this idea that this or that other thing is more important? And sometimes yes, and sometimes no, but it usually makes me feel calmer. It's like it lets me let go of the if only I had this, then I'd be able to do this. And I become less certain that having endless amounts of money would solve all of my problems, actually. Anyway, that's just a random reflection about what a fascinating question you just threw out there, Kareen.
Yeah, and sorry to drop that at the last 5 minutes, because you're right, that is very rich. I would just add that I think what money can buy is time. Time. Peace, it frees me up. Right. And having a really important conversation, very tangible conversation around values. Thanks for picking this topic, Ali.
Yeah, thanks for joining. What an interesting piece. And it's got my juices flowing for next month. We'll have to see where we go. If you guys have ideas about what you'd like us to talk about next month, let us know. Also, the circle is tomorrow. So if you're thinking of coming, it's at 7 o'clock MST. Yeah, send me a note if you want to join and I'll send you the Zoom link.
I'm not
Okay,
sure if I can. I haven't checked my calendar, but just send me the link, Allie.
Okay, sure. I
Please.
will, Nancy. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, have a lovely Sunday, everybody. I'll talk to you
Enjoy
again
your
soon.
time.
You too. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much for this.